Hey, welcome back to Hot Spots with Connor Martinez at John's Sporting Goods. This is where we take one spot on the Puget Sound for one specific fishery and give you tips, strategies, maps, gear, all in under 10 minutes. So today is all about the oil docks. Now, there's some confusion here because some people think the oil docks is Edmonds. There's confusion where some people think the oil docks is Richmond Beach. Let's just give the oil docks their own region.
Yeah.
Let's call them the oil docks. It's Area 10.
Area 10.
Cool.
Yep.
So we're actually right inside Area 10 because right on the north end of the oil docks, you've got the Edmonds Dog Park, and that's where the line, that 10-9 line starts, right? And goes all the way across to
Apple Tree Cove Point.
Apple Tree Cove Point. Yep. So today we're talking Chinook. This could be winter Chinook. This could be summer Chinook, but we're talking Chinook at the oil docks. So number one, we always start with tides. What's the best tide to fish the oil docks?
The nice part about the oil docks, you can fish it on either tide. You're just going to position your boat in a little different area as far as the incoming or the outgoing goes, but it's a spot that you can fish on either tide.
So general rule of thumb that you like when you're fishing is you like to fish with the tide.
Yep.
So let's say we're fishing an outgoing tide.
Outgoing tide.
Okay, so the tide there at the oil docks is going to be moving northwest-ish, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to start more at the south end of the oil docks.
You got it. Yep.
Okay, so I would almost go as far as saying you're starting out a little bit further toward Richmond Beach because it comes up really, really quick. The south end of the oil docks, if you're not careful, you'll be in 12 feet of water in 20 yards, right?
Yep.
So, and you guys, I live on Richmond Beach, so I live probably 500 yards away from the oil docks.
Yeah.
So I know this. I've seen the tide go out. In fact, I've sent you pictures on a super low tide where the tide is way out there with the oil. You can see the bottom way out there by the oil docks.
Right.
So we're gonna fish the outgoing. You're gonna start at the south end.
Yep. I'm gonna start
and fish that contour. So let's talk about the contour of the oil docks.
There's not a lot to it, honestly. I think the oil docks, especially when we were fishing this in December and January, you had a huge squid migration. So those oil docks and those pilings, it brought in a lot of bait for these winter blackmouth. I was just telling Dan a story. I remember fishing with John there, and our rod tips were 6 feet away from the oil docks, and we're fishing these hoochies. Yeah. And just crushing fish there. Yeah. So I think you're almost using the oil docks as far as it's bringing bait in, but there's really not a whole lot of contour. Like you're saying, on the very south end, it jets up to kind of a sandy flat plateau on Richmond Beach. But if I'm fishing the outgoing tide, for instance, I'm going to start on the south end of those oil docks. I'm going to troll right past it. And once you get past them a little bit, you got a little bay on the north end of there. And I almost am going to follow that 90 to 120 foot contour and go just above it. Yeah. But yeah, not a whole lot of contour to it. You're kind of fishing a big sandy flat there.
Yeah. And if you're going to need, if you haven't fished the oil docks before, you're going to need to go out there. Because on both sides of the oil docks, you have really, really shallow bays. Yeah. Now on the north side of it, you've got a larger, wider bay. The south end of the oil docks, if you're not careful, you'll be up in 10 feet of water in no time. And so we always end these episodes with one like next level strategy or tip that you hold in your back pocket. I'm going to share mine right now with you. That south end of the oil docks, okay, so you're 10, 15 feet away from the actual dock, the piers. Yep. Right when you get to the end, you're going to watch the contour. You're going to need to veer out into the open, or you're going to be up on really shallow water. Follow the contour of that ground and just run a couple of circles. Now, a lot of times when you fish the oil docks, there's a lot of boats out there, so you can't do this.
For sure.
But for some reason, in certain tides, fish just hold in that little area, that little nook there in the south end of the oil docks. But I've seen people out there catching Chinook 100 yards out into the open from the oil docks. My general rule of thumb, and I got a lot of marks to support this, get in there, get right up in there, and we just make passes. We'll start probably 40, 50 yards out, and with every pass, get a little bit closer.
Yep, totally right.
Yep. So as far as, let's talk, and I'm curious to hear your strategy too, because I know you got a good one, but we'll wrap with that. Gear. Let's talk gear.
Okay. Like I said, when we're fishing this in December and January, you're getting a huge influence of squid in there. So my go-to for fishing the oil docks is going to be a hoochie. I'm trying to match what those fish are feeding on, and you know, we're catching these and cutting them open. They're going to have some squid in them, so I'm going to run. This is one of my favorites. I don't know the number. I should know this, but it's a clear hoochie. It has a blue and a yellow stripe. It's UV, and then I have the glow larger ace high fly on the inside of. I always say this, I'm trying to get both ends of the spectrum. I have glow and UV in this presentation, which I think is perfect, and I went with the clear so you could kind of see the glow. I'm not saying it looks exactly like a squid, but it's close enough to where this will do some damage for sure.
Yeah, pay attention to his hook placement too. You got one hook coming out right below the eyeball of that squid, and the other one dangling right below the skirt.
My rule of thumb is the eye of my hook needs to be as close as I can to the very end of that hoochie. So that's just about perfect. And then I put a glow bead, and these orange beads are actually UV, just for a little extra attractant, and helps with spacing, helps protect my leader between the two hooks. But yeah, this is definitely, if I'm over at the Oil Docks, I'm putting that guy down there.
Perfect. For sure. Okay, and we've got leader length and leader type.
Leader length, when I run a hoochie, it's always 36 inches from the back hook to where I tie to my chain swivel. I always use 30-pound fluorocarbon. I like the SEAGUAR orange label fluorocarbon. I think as far as pliability-wise, it's easiest to tie with, but it's still stiff enough and tough enough to do what I want it to do.
So I see what I would use if I were to fish the Oil Docks tomorrow. I see that on the counter. It's my tried and true Skinny G herring aid, right? I love that guy.
Yeah, this one
I'd have a hard time not throwing that out there.
Yep. Well, again, certain times of the year, you're going to have herring in there too.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really, really good idea to fish a hoochie presentation on one side and then have a presentation on the other side that you're trying to match either candlefish or herring. And this does perfectly.
Yeah. Yep. Last summer, you gave Hudson, my son, a KILLY McGee, because you went up and fished with us in the San Juans. He came back and he fished. We live, like I said, a few hundred yards away from the Oil Docks. So I got him a little 12-foot aluminum with a 15-horse Yamaha. And he would go out there and he had no problem catching really nice Chinook on that KILLY McGee right there. So
KILLY McGee,
talk to us about that spoon right there.
This KILLY McGee, it's an all UV spoon. There's no glow on it whatsoever, which I would typically be hesitant on that because I like having both, but I got some information from one of my buddies who fished it, and he crushes fish. So I'm like, yeah, what the heck, we'll try it. And it works. It's half nickel, half green. And right where the two colors change, there's kind of a more definitive, darker bluish line. So it's really almost the same colors of those herring aid spoons, just a little different. Again, nickel back. I always put a red eye on it. I do it with all my spoons. I put red eyes on them. And then, of course, I switch my hook. A 3/0 Stinger Siwash hook goes on these. I do bend these a little differently than what they come out of the package. You'll have to come in the store to show you that because it's hard to do it on camera. But I use the same leader as I would with hoochies. It's 30-pound fluorocarbon made by SEAGUAR. It's orange label. And I always put chain swivels so I can interchange these things. And it's weird. With spoons, I measure it differently. I measure from the top of the spoon to where I tie to my chain swivel is 42 inches. 42. A little longer.
Okay, a little longer than a hoochie. And then you got the John Martinis special, tried and true. That works. That's great out there for Chinook in the summer.
Oh, yeah. It'll work in the winter for blackmouth too, for sure. But I always have one of these tied up. My Uncle John has probably caught more fish than any of us on the in the Puget Sound on this spoon directly. It's the 3.0 cookies and cream GOLDSTAR spoon. Phenomenal spoon. I put the same hook on there. I put a 3/0 Stinger Siwash hook. This one I do bend the same way as I would the KILLY McGee or the herring aid Skinny G. And then, same leader, 30-pound fluorocarbon, orange label SEAGUAR, and it's 42 inches from the top ring to where I tie to my chain.
And you don't really change. You don't differ much on flashers. So in the last minute here for you guys, let's talk about the flasher that you prefer, and then we're going to give you the bonus tip for Connor for fishing the Oil Docks.
My favorite flasher, Morning Mist Pro Troll. It's a blinky flasher, so it has a little light in the center of it. I've used this, like I said, I use this thing all year long. It works extraordinarily well, and I put an orange stripe right down the pipe. John Martinis special, the green Hornet. and it kind of looks different on the camera, but this is an orange stripe as well. I always just add orange. John's done it for 100 years, so I carry the tradition on with it. But this is the Pro Troll Green Hornet, a really, really good flasher for Chinook.
So if you were fishing with Connor, a tip that he would say, hey, DK, we got to go try this.
Yeah.
One of your tips for fishing the oil docks.
If the tide's going out, we're fishing like we started at the beginning, the tide's going out. I like to carry that troll on. I go past the oil docks. I like to turn into that little bay. I stay on the same contour. It's like 90 to 120 feet. And I'll go past the oil docks and I'll troll up that bank just a little bit. Some guys get stuck on just fishing out in front of the oil docks. But beyond that, like you were saying on the south end, that little J you like to fish. I like to do it on the other end as well, where I'll turn the corner, I'll go into the bay, and I'll troll up a little ways. I've caught in a lot of winter blackmouth right there with John.
So this is on the north end of the oil docks.
Yep.
Again, you can go right past it, and you'll see it. You'll see it level out and turn into a bay. So you're following that contour out into that that bay, east into that bay.
You go east, and then you'll go back north.
That's it.
Yep.
I love it, man. A couple of really good tips right there. I've spent a lot of time at the oil docks, and it produces fish. So, hey, thanks again for another Hot Spots. We'll be back soon with another one. In the meantime, we'll see you on the water.